Now, Japan, fortunately, came in and bought that same debt. It would be better if we simply had retired that debt. But my last point is this. You continue to build up that deficit. You continue to sell those treasury bonds to other countries who are not always on the same page with us internationally, and you have created a weapon which you hand to our adversaries. I'll conclude the way I began, and I'll take your questions. Barbara Boxer spends too much.
Yeah.
Elect Tom Campbell. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Good. So, I want to get some questions from some people. I have a couple questions, and depending on your time, if you would be willing to join us for some of this, because I think what you touched on was very similar to what we're going to talk about here, about how Republicans can win going forward. But I would be remiss, at least from an entertainment side, if I didn't ask you, well, before I do that, let me give you another plug, right? You know, when I was in law school and I was vice president of Federal Society at Bold, we had the national convention over at Stanford. And you were over there, and I remember, right? I remember that whole thing, and John Yoo was our advisor, and Mark Levin was there with the Institute of Justice and that whole thing, and you did an upstanding, unbelievable job. You brought the House down there, and I want to just let everybody know that you are someone that has been for the 10th Amendment and constitutional provisions of federalism from the get-go.
Thanks very much.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure. I mean, so now I would be remiss, at least from my conservative media standpoint, if I didn't ask you about this demon chief thing. And that was kind of a crazy thing. I mean, you knew that was coming.
No, I didn't, but I can attest to it.
You can take care of it.
It led to the very best fundraising day I ever had in this campaign.
Oh.
So I took the attack ad and put it out on my own.
What did you think about that, though? I mean, you just watched it for the first time. What goes through your brain?
That this was so bad, it's actually going to help me.
It was like I felt like Mystery Science Theater 3000. Oh, they were watching like a bad episode of Lord of the Rings or something like that.
In the not too distant future, next Sunday, AD.
Yeah, okay. It was just weird.
We both of us watch MST3K. Point two, though, let's get serious. What I did the next week was to announce my budget. I thought that was the best possible response.
Yeah.
So the president has his budget, and it has a $1.17 trillion deficit. I was able to find $700 billion to cut and announced my budget the next week in the midst of the demon sheep. So I think that's how you respond to something like that.
So give us a vibe of this race. You got out of the governor's race, you got into this race, you've got Chuck DeVore, you've got Carly Fiorina, you were right there in the polls, if not leading. I mean, what's your vibe of this race? How are you going to win it? How are you going to approach it?
Barbara Boxer spends too much. There it is. Let's keep it focused, guys and ladies. This is how you win. Democrats, Republicans, Independents know she spends too much. She cannot suddenly say, Barbara Boxer, new fiscal conservative. It's not going to work. And I have the chops. I've got the ratings.
Yeah.
There's no refuting that. And so keep it on that focus. And the contrast is a winner. It's also a winner for the country because we would replace one of the biggest spenders Congress has ever seen with one of the least spenders that Congress has ever seen. That's how I win. In terms of the primary, Barbara Boxer spends too much. I just keep I noticed the can I beat her in November? Well, sure. And I've had a good chance of beating her in November. It's a good reason to vote for me in the primary. In terms of the focus, notice also that it's economics. And then I tie it to jobs. Why does it matter that she spends too much? Because it's special projects in districts of powerful members of Congress like this new jobs bill. That doesn't get me a job. So among my proposals to cut $700 billion out of the president's budget is to take half of his so-called stimulus money and pay down the debt. Let's get the debt down. Let's show investors and employers that we're serious. And what do you do with the other half? Forgive the payroll tax for anybody that you hire who's been out of work for 2 months.
I like that.
It's a tangible
program. That's a good one. That's a good one.
So that's how you do it.
So you've got the experience, before we get to the audience here, you've got the experience, you've been there before, you've got the chops, you've got the intellectual firepower, you've got the professorial stuff. But how do you change the system? How do you do a Scott Brown, you win in November, you win in June, you go there, but now you're just one of 100. How do you shake up that power structure? What can you do to make a difference?
I'm one of more than 40.
Well, right, okay, fair enough.
I bring it down from 60.
Okay, fair enough.
The Dems are set to bring it back to 60. That's their goal, that's their message. One of the wonderful things about putting the real pressure in California is we're causing the Dems to have to defend what they thought they didn't have to defend.
Amen to that.
And that, I think, is just tremendously good for the country. So I'm one of more than 40. The Senate is very different from the House. In the House, it's 100% ruled by the majority. 50% plus one rules everything. Not so in the Senate. Although we're about to see they might ram through their health care plan and reconciliation. If they do, the country is worse off, but also they hand the election to us in November.
Agreed.
If they do that, then they have abused their power. Even worse than saying to pay for the health care plan, anyone with a health insurance policy more generous than we think you should have must pay a tax, unless you're in a union.
Exactly.
Which is,
what's up with that?
Well,
crony capitalism.
Not to mention the special deal in Nebraska, the special deal in Louisiana. That's arrogance of Florida. That's arrogance of power. So what can I do? I can keep them from being 60. Secondly, power of a single senator is huge. That's because of the way the Senate works. So many bills come to the floor on unanimous consent. In the House, it's the Rules Committee. The Speaker controls the Rules Committee, 50% plus one. So in many ways, it's exactly the right place for somebody who knows the system and has a record of not voting to increase the size of government but to make it smaller. The Senate is the place to do that.
Amen. Okay, who's got a question for Congressman Campbell out there? Questions? Quite a lot of questions. Let's get to the audience right here. Your name and your question.
Joe Sanchez here. I want to thank you for coming and speaking to us.
Thanks for
having my question is this. I think young professionals today, when they look at their future, they see a world or a country that has so much debt, like you said, about 125,000 on each of our shoulders. Future inflation, which really is a hidden tax on us going forward. Unemployment for young people between 18 and 35 is about 30% in a lot of states now. And as well as the entitlement programs that we're paying for that we probably will never see in Social Security and Medicare. What do you say for us young people and kind of, what can we do to not only, inspire ourselves, but also inspire our fellow young professionals?
You deserve the right to earn what you can and to keep what you earn. I don't know anything that inspires a young professional more than that. The capital gains tax is outrageous. We need to lower it so that people who start companies, who create investments, who create opportunity have the chance to keep more of what they earn. The size of the government is taking away the energy and the resources from the private sector. The president announced that he had got 2 million new jobs because of the stimulus package. The Wall Street Journal did their
No one in the
analysis.
administration agrees on the number, though. They're all off by about 500,000 or million.
Don't worry, Vice President Biden has been put in charge now. I can't make this up. He's been put in charge of measuring it. So we'll
Speaking of Biden, did you see the video of him singing, supposedly drunk, The Villages? That's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
No, I haven't seen that. But
You can see that on YouTube.
I have an aversion to video attacks on YouTube. So
Yeah, it's okay.
the other point I wanted to make is that the president says 2 million. Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, I think, did their own estimates, just over 500,000.
Wow.
And 385,000 of the 500,000 are in the government.
Yeah.
So, what has your $789 billion of stimulus got you? 385,000 government jobs. That's the difference, I think, between what the Republicans can offer to young professionals and what we can. One last thing, although you don't mention it as often perhaps, it really deserves to be mentioned in our state. Agriculture is dying.
Yes.
The Dems are all for turning off the water in the Central Valley. The unemployment rate in the Central Valley is above 17% in 5 of the Central Valley counties. So when we speak of young professionals, let's not ignore those young professionals in agriculture too, who are suffering from a drought of man-made as well as nature-made proportions.
Fantastic point.